Welcome to today's CRM Magazine Roundtable web event, brought to you by IntelliResponse, CallFinder, Verint, and Calabrio. I'm David Myron, Editorial Director of CRM Magazine, and I'll be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is entitled, Are You Effectively Listening to Your Customers? Before we start, allow me to explain how you can participate in this live broadcast. At the end of the event, there will be a question and answer session. If you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the Submit button. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but if your question has not been answered during the show, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. Plus, if you would like a copy of the presentation, you can download a PDF from the resource icon at the bottom of the console once the event is archived. Now, I'll introduce our speakers for today's event. Andrew Estevez is the Director of Account Development at IntelliResponse. Sabrina DeRose is the Account Manager of Speech Analytics Solutions at CallFinder. Alan Steffen is the Global Vice President of Customer Analytics at Verint. And Brad Snedeker is the Innovation Center Manager at Calabrio. To review the speakers' bios, please click on the speaker icon at the bottom of the console. So now, without further ado, let me pass the event over to Andrew Estevez, Director of Account Development at IntelliResponse. Welcome to the broadcast, Andrew.
Thanks, David. It's great to be here on the panel today. Specifically, what I'm going to be focusing on today is how folks can leverage virtual agents to better understand the voice of your customers. So this may seem like a new concept for everyone, using virtual agents to gather VOC data, but here's the thing. Customers are increasingly taken to the web to get general information. Nearly 7% of people will go to the company website first before they use the telephone, before they visit a store in person. And as these journeys are taking place more and more frequently online as the first point of contact with numbers like this, it becomes very clear how vital digital channels have become in the first stages of a customer journey. So we know today that nearly 6 out of every 10 persons who call into a call center have actually visited the website first. They're actually trying to self-serve. And this is a trend that's increasingly becoming more verifiable across all markets, and something that we take to heart here at IntelliResponse, understanding that that digital storefront that you're providing in the form of your website is becoming more and more important in terms of customer service, and as such, gathering that vital voice of the customer data through those interactions. We also know that nearly a full third of these folks are still on your website when they're actually talking to your call center reps. And so the question becomes, how can you provide a great digital experience but also leverage that experience and those interactions for VOC, or voice of the customer, insights? So to give a little bit of context and a little bit of background, our approach at IntelliResponse is to manage digital channels with a virtual agent technology platform. So where virtual agent software excels is really with understanding the intent behind a customer question and delivering one right answer. So a little bit different than other self-service types of interactions through, say, search or even click to chat. So our customers were generally able to see a reduction that's fairly substantial in their Tier 0 and Tier 1 interactions by about 30% on the phone channel, and generally over 50% through the email channel. And they're also able to leverage the platform, the virtual agent from IntelliResponse, to gain amazing VOC insights from the analysis of these digital interactions with the agent. So one of the biggest things to consider here, really, in order to best support and collect voice of the customer data, it's vital that all of the digital service channels available to your customer base offer the capacity to collect this rich data. So a virtual agent, for example, can be easily deployed across multiple channels. It can provide a consistent experience for customers and valuable opportunities for the enterprise to better understand what's driving your customer efforts when they're engaging with you. So there can be many ways for anyone to ask for information, to ask a specific question. These questions and interactions obviously are what form the basis of voice of the customer content itself. And the IntelliResponse virtual agent allows customers to engage these channels in their own natural language, providing the customer one right answer and providing the business with the exact voice of the customer during that session. It doesn't really matter how a question is asked. Our system can understand the intent of that question and then maps it to a core question, and in return sends back one right answer to the customer. So the clients that we work with, over 160 of them today, leveraging almost 500 separate iterations of our technology, are really collecting millions upon millions of customer questions per year. So now if we imagine the power of being able to analyze those millions of customer questions that are being asked through these digital channels each month, and really what that could yield for the enterprise on the back end. And this is how we do it. We feel that a true enterprise virtual agent solution can analyze in real time the millions of questions and provide deep and actionable insights. And at IntelliResponse, our VOC platform is called Voices. And I can walk you through at a pretty high level what Voices actually does. And I'll show a little bit in the further slides of how the system works and how folks are actually able to interact with it. So as I mentioned previously, virtual agents can be located in every channel, including web and mobile, social channels, and even through agent desktops within a traditional call center. Customers aren't badgered or incented to engage with the virtual agent, and that is typically the case with most outbound surveys and focus groups, and as such, the topics of conversation within the VA reflect what customers want to talk about. So it's really the very definition of permission-based research. Because virtual agent technologies capture customer queries in their own language, the data collected is actually pure. It's untainted language of the customer, and it's neither molded nor confined by the survey design as happens with traditional methods of gathering that sort of feedback. The Voices technology can also intelligently categorize and identify key themes and trends, can eliminate cost and hassle of having to manually organize and analyze the unstructured data that is generally what we see in more traditional methods of analyzing this type of information. And that customer experience and marketing professionals no longer need to wait weeks or months for the data to be organized and distributed through the company. It's very valuable. So Voices, and really where the rubber meets the road, enables the visualization of data in real time. And it also allows us the ability to drill in and drill down and compare data by date range, theme, channel. And essentially what we're trying to do with the platform is empower leaders to make faster, higher quality decisions that can have an immediate impact on customer experience and conversion. So I've prepared a few screenshots just to show really, a visual representation of some of the basic forms that Voices can take. And essentially what we're trying to do here is understand that we could be looking at lines and lines of potential feedback from surveys or from comment fields that folks are filling out when they're interacting with your enterprise. But what we decided to do at IntelliResponse was to find a very visually stimulating and easy to consume way of looking at all of this information. And what we're able to do is take, again, the hundreds of thousands or millions of questions that come in through the virtual agent or other channels that we can funnel through the VOC Voices platform and automatically group them into actionable themes, producing insights, product ideation, understanding really what is top of mind for your customers as they're engaging with you. And again, this is all through those digital channels. So one of the things Voices is really great at doing is understanding where we can look at time frames from the current time to the trailing 6, 30, 60, 90, or even full year previous to that to see what kind of impact our actions have had on our customer service methodology. We can see where content gaps exist. We can see what's top of mind at any particular point in time, that true voice of the customer in real time. And we can also see what customer experience issues exist or are emerging in real time. So one of the great things here is that because there's no delay between the interaction on the front end with your customers and what we're seeing through voices, we're actually able to be a lot more proactive than reactive in the sense that we're seeing in real time what they're saying, what's top of mind, and what areas we might have quick wins or easy impact on as we move forward. One of the other aspects of understanding the voice of the customer is really analyzing the journey from top to bottom or beginning to end. And part of what we do within the IntelliResponse Voices platform is to try to understand that when someone does interact with us through any of the channels that we provide, there's a good chance that there are multiple touches or multiple clicks or multiple questions that could be asked. And all of that information taken as a whole and together is very valuable to us. And so we've basically added a feature within our Voice of the Customer platform called Journeys, which allows us to map the entire session as a whole and try to understand where our customers may be seeing challenges, where they're escalating up the ladder to higher cost channels, where we're being successful, and perhaps where we could refine our processes or that journey down to fewer steps and make that experience even more effortless than it already is through these digital channels. So what you see here is a visual representation of the number of folks who have asked about a particular theme. And again, they're doing this in natural language. It's not a keyword or text analytics-based platform. And they're able to really show the administrators exactly how many clicks, how many questions, how many interactions it's taken to get them to task resolution. And we find that a lot of the companies that do work with us have seen some great value in being able to map out what these journeys look like in this visual format. It's easy to share. It's also very easy to understand. There's no training involved. And truly what you're able to see here is a click-by-click representation of any one of those interactions with your customer base. So I think I wanted to sort of end off by sharing a bit of a success story of one of our clients. This is just a quick case study snapshot of a company called BC Hydro. It's one of the largest utility companies in North America, and it's based in British Columbia on Canada's west coast. They serve over 1.9 million customers today, and they leverage the virtual agent not only for customer service, but for that voice of the customer capability that it provides to them through all of the digital channels that they've actually deployed the service on. So at a very high level, we can see here in the first 11 months that the virtual agent has been deployed by BC Hydro. They've fielded and answered over 700,000 questions. We've seen an accuracy rating of one right answer delivered back on the customer service side of over 92%, which is pretty impressive considering they were seeing a pretty big shift of customers from traditional channels over into the digital sphere. And really where the rubber meets the road on the VOC side of things is the idea that we were able to add content for them based on these interactions. We were able to see that there was a spike in questions around solar power, and that content was easily added. They've seen a huge focus on what's happened through their billing and account section, as well as their space heater, patio, and water heaters information on that website, all of which has been pulled out of Voices and turned into actionable insight for them. So just to wrap up here, we believe that most of the companies that we do come across and deal with think that they've done a fantastic job in terms of delivering superior customer service and really understanding the voice of their customers. And in truth, statistically, we've come across a lot of information recently that tells us that that really isn't the case today. The majority of our clients aren't actually reaching out to us when they've had a poor experience online. And I think that gathering that voice of the customer data is becoming more and more important. So what I would suggest today as I'm wrapping up here is that folks take a look at their digital self-service technology as a method to provide not only better customer support and to gain better insights into the voice of the customer, but also to understand that those interactions are gold. And if they're able to be mined properly, they can really be taken to the next level in terms of improving the enterprise as a whole. And I'm just going to pass things back to you, David. If there are any other questions, our information's on the screen there. I'd be happy to have a conversation and follow up with any of the folks who happen to be viewing the presentation.
All right, Andrew, thanks for that. Now let's pass the event over to our next presenter. Sabrina DeRose is the Account Manager of Speech Analytics Solutions at CallFinder. Welcome to the webinar, Sabrina.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be participating in today's roundtable. Thanks again for having me, David, and welcome everyone. So my goal today is to get you to start thinking about ways to improve your voice of the customer efforts and help you avoid inefficient call monitoring and call handling practices. So to do that today, I want to share 3 business examples of how companies are using speech analytics to efficiently access the intel inside their voice conversations, and of course how they're going to leverage that knowledge to change processes within their own contact centers. So let us jump right in. As we know today, the contact center houses a wealth of data. I'm sure you're all familiar with these types of things, IVR statistics, abandoned rates, to name a few. So what do they all have in common? Well, these metrics are all very structured, quantifiable, and easily obtained through tracking technology. Now I want you to start to think about all the intelligence, information, and insights contained within your phone conversations with your customers. It's no surprise that this can be an under-leveraged or underutilized resource, as by definition, phone conversations are unstructured fragments of information that do not contain quantifiable data. So the challenge then lies in how to efficiently access and collect all of that unstructured information in a manageable way. Businesses are searching for an automated tool to help extract their customer voice. This is where speech analytics is becoming a must-have. The power of an automated speech analytics solution gives you the ability to scan and process thousands of calls, amounting to many thousands of hours of conversations within mere minutes. And the technology can precisely identify key spoken phrases and then categorize them based on content within those conversations. Overall, this is helping to prioritize your listening efforts and helping to pinpoint areas that may matter the most to you. So how do you leverage a speech analytics tool to listen to your customers and agents where and when it matters the most? So there are many applications out there, and I'll be showcasing a couple of business examples to show you how some of the business that we've worked with have applied speech analytics. So this first case study surrounds a career college that came to us a couple of years ago after they began to recognize a decline in enrollment in what used to be their most popular and profitable programs. It was actually estimated by the director of marketing that by the year 2022, their surgical technician program was going to go by 30%. Yet their program stats proved otherwise, as their surgical program had been in a steady decline. So after they implemented an audio mining tool to listen to what was actually taking place on their calls, they figured out that what the representatives were saying on that very first call was directly correlated to their decline with enrollment. So quickly, the technology started to categorize their calls by student inquiry or program type. And this allowed them to easily identify and address the confusion their prospective students were experiencing, well, due to poor agent representation of their surgical program. And an admission rep or let me put it this way. The tool was able to highlight when students were asking, tell me more about your surgical program, and an admissions rep responding with, I'll have to ask my director, or worse, we don't have a program like that, which indicated very, very clear knowledge gaps with what was being said. They used speech analytics to create a system of assurance that their admission team was accurately describing their student programs, asking the proper questions, gathering the correct information from the student, and to observe the overall call handling within their conversations to make sure that they met their director's expectations. So this example helps to illustrate how a speech analytics platform made it easy to use the agent voice to understand and improve their student experience. To illustrate an entirely different industry, one of our largest call center clients in the home remodeling industry came to us because they were struggling with gaps within their agent training and coaching programs. This was highly evident when their quarterly results were published, and management quickly recognized the severity of the problem. Sales were down. Their agents were falling short of converting their prospects into appointments, and they needed to better understand what was leading to so many missed opportunities. Many businesses that we speak to every day are running severely lean, and I'm sure you can relate to this. You're juggling multiple responsibilities, perhaps you're managing more than one team. So what was this management supposed to do? They didn't have the time or the resources to enact the training program of their dreams, so to speak. Speech analytics allowed their management and training team to identify missed opportunities, as well as segment out the stellar performers from, well, the not so stellar performers. And the technology was able to highlight calls where customers were asking for a ballpark price, and an agent's response of, sorry, I can't give you a price, derailed the conversation completely. So this allowed their trainers to easily find agents demonstrating excellent closing skills, for example, or forgetting to use critical compliance points. A point that I definitely want to stress is telling the representative that they have to use proper talking points doesn't work nearly as well as showing them what good and poor examples sound like. Their audio learning tool was pivotal to helping improve their call monitoring and their training routine. And as a result, they were able to reduce the man-hours of quality assurance monitoring and analysis time by actually 90%, and are still currently experiencing a 59% improvement in their sales conversion rates. In total, this directly impacted the revenue side of the contact center. And the last case I want to share is completely shifting things. I focused on more traditional call centers, and within this last example, we're dealing with a cosmetic surgery practice. And they came to us seeking intelligence pertaining to the types of calls their staff was handling. They knew from sporadic word-of-mouth feedback that their patients were looking for a more specific types of information not currently being offered. So they had tremendous call volume, and they had many different locations. And the fact that marketing costs were tight, well, the practice needed to be able to more efficiently assess and enact changes to their strategy. But there was no way they were able to glean this type of intelligence without a powerful tool in place. So in order to classify and access calls around this topic, they decided to implement a speech analytics tool to listen to every single customer conversation, so that they were able to quickly gather that when a customer called in for one procedure, they often inquired about 3 other procedures on that same call. Phrases like, can I get that done at the same time? What is the cost of multiple procedures? Can it be completed the same day? Occurred so frequently that management quickly recognized a growing trend they could finally capitalize on. They completely refocused their marketing strategy and created what they called the mommy package, which ultimately bundled multiple procedures during the same visit for a discounted price. This ended up providing extreme value to their patients, but it's important to note that it also drove revenue for the practice as they were able to offer multiple procedures at one time. So for the first time in the practice's history, they were able to make strategic marketing decisions based on actual customer wants because of speech analytics. So the cases that I shared today surrounded a lot of different types of applications: workforce training, sales effectiveness, customer experience monitoring. But I want to note that there are so many other possibilities out there, ranging from business process analysis to risk mitigation, dispute resolution. The key to improving your voice of the customer program by using speech analytics is defining your goals first and then tying it to management's objectives. It's important to note that there were obviously best practices at play that made the cases I shared so successful. They had one common denominator. They took action, as reports derived from any tool is not terribly meaningful unless you do something about it. Take the time to extract your insights and understand what the information means to you, then decide what you're going to do to implement those changes. In fact, companies who are taking the time to understand the customer journey are experiencing a 28% year-over-year increase in revenue. It's also important to note that even small improvements can have a large impact on the contact center's larger goals. Even a 10% increase in customer retention levels can result in a 30% increase in the value of a company. And something that I always like to stress is that when you're ready to research and implement a speech analytics solution, make sure the technology fits your business needs and the resources that you have available. We've been in the telecom business for 25 years with a wealth of experience in routing, recording, and analyzing phone conversations. And in my 4 years of working at CallFinder, I've had the pleasure of helping businesses who are struggling with improving their voice of the customer programs by helping them gain better control of their call monitoring, employee training, and quality assurance efforts. CallFinder is a completely cloud-based speech analytics solution, and we pride ourselves on making speech analytics accessible and affordable to as many businesses as possible. That means no hardware or software needed, with little to no IT involvement. And we work directly with you and provide one-on-one onboarding, training, and support. We'll identify your goals together, the types of calls you want monitored, the scope of your needs, whether it's for 1 or 2 departments or for all of your incoming calls that you want analyzed. So hopefully today we were able to provide you with some ideas of how to effectively access the voice of your customers through the channel of your phone conversations. So let me help you take it to the next step. Of course, you can call or email me directly. I would love to talk. This is one of my favorite topics. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you, Sabrina. Now on to our next presenter, Alan Steffen, who is the Global Vice President of Customer Analytics at Verint. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you, David. It's an honor to be part of this roundtable. When I was approached and asked to take part in this panel, really wanted to start with how to help organizations move forward with their customer experience program, and perhaps where to start. And some of you may be familiar with Verint, some of you may not, but much like your organizations, we are evolving very rapidly. 20 years ago, we started with digital call recording, and we've evolved with very advanced applications with speech analytics, text analytics, survey tools, as well as multi-channel predictive tools as a result. And very key in that is using the voice of the customer at the heart of what we're doing. And I've been very fortunate to speak with many customers who are in the midst of launching their customer experience program or trying to take it to the next level. And it may seem very odd coming from somebody who is in charge of customer analytics, but I'm going to spend very little time today talking actually about software or technology, because in fact, the main place to start is usually the question that I get asked of, how do I get this started? How do I accelerate it? And it really begins with building a very strong foundation. We advise our customers to start with what we call our 5 foundational concepts for their CXP programs, beginning with understanding and clearly defining their vision, that strategy coming from the C-level and C-suite so that everybody in the organization is aligned on becoming more customer-centric. This is critical so that it doesn't become a flavor of the month project, but it becomes a program. And that lends itself to the definition and creation of a very strong governance. Now, some folks may not like the word governance, and in some places the word committee has a very negative connotation within your organization, and that's understandable. But the need here is to establish cross-functional accountability, a center of excellence, and a model that will allow this to be repeatable, programmatic, and not, as I mentioned, the flavor of the month, and really help us drive the objectives of the program with the common vision in mind. And obviously that creates a very strong focus on culture. And by culture, what we're talking about are the behavioral norms of the employees on a day-to-day basis. Many people talk about becoming more customer-centric, but really what that entails is having employees at the front line and in the back office change their behaviors to become more customer-centric, to drive and imbue that sense of empathy for who the customer is and how their day-to-day activities impact your customers. And very importantly, to have a focus on processes. This becomes really the oil that keeps your machine running within your organizations. How do the different departments interact with each other? This is critical so that you enable the departments not to be siloed, using your CX program to knock down some of those barriers. Common metrics, customer metrics that become the common fuel that helps your organization move forward. And lastly, obviously, technology. Using technology as the enabler by capturing customer feedback and engagement. Using technology to enable that information to become accessible at the point of contact for both your employees and your customers. Now, once you're able to build that foundation, once you have those pieces in place, then you can layer on what we call the 4 pillars of a successful customer experience program. This is where you can start building your house on that foundation. And the first pillar is to listen and capture feedback. You then move on to analyzing and measuring the trends using that data. You have to distribute the insights and sell the insights and the findings from your customers. And lastly, very importantly, to act on those results, what we call executing on the last mile of engagement with those customer insights. And beginning with the first pillar, what we're talking about here is capturing the voice of the customer, setting up what we call listening posts, whether it be through surveys, speech analytics, as Sabrina mentioned, text analytics, structured and unstructured data. The key here is to understand where you need to set up your listening posts and begin by capturing that information. Once you capture it, then you can move on to the next pillar of analyzing and measuring trends. This is where you begin to understand the context, truly beginning to synthesize the sentiment, the emotion, understanding the behaviors and the drivers of your customers' needs and wants. You need to integrate it. Our recommendation is to integrate it with CRM data, with segmentation data, as well as what you have existing within your personas of your customers. This helps drive rich context for your findings. And very importantly, to be able to measure your critical customer experience metrics. This enables you to start managing your customers' journeys across channels. Right? As the old anecdote or the old saying goes, if it can't be measured, it can't be managed. And what's very critical here is you have insights and visibility into what your customers are doing across the channels, but more importantly, to layer on the context and analysis of why. Now, once you have that, obviously, it's very important to sell those insights and distribute them across the organization, and that's our third pillar. What's very important here is that you make it beyond just the reports and the readouts and the dashboards that we talk about and advocate, but making it a living and breathing everyday occurrence. And for that, we recommend regular, systematic stakeholder reviews, using that board of governance, sharing best practices internally and with others in the field. And very importantly, to keep very diligent track of the financial impact of your program. Don't let it be lost in terms of what the return on your efforts have been. Once you're able to do that, you bake those insights into existing strategies. That enables you then to begin to integrate those insights into operational tools, such as case management, to close the loop on follow-up and deficiencies. As we all know, many of us are acutely aware, when we ask our customers for feedback, it's very critical to let them know that we've heard them and that we're acting on that feedback. Otherwise, we are going to lose credibility and lose them as a respondent and perhaps a customer. We need to identify through that analysis where the pain points are in processes, in systems, in our own organizational management, and then implement those changes and track them against an action plan and have high-level visibility and accountability with our board of governance. That allows us then to not only optimize our enterprise at the highest level, but at the moment of truth, to really tailor that communication so that we are personalizing that for our customer. Data makes that possible, but it requires a programmatic approach. Once you're able to execute on those 4 pillars, what you have then is a sustainable program. And again, technology is certainly an enabler, but this requires a very programmatic and disciplined approach. Now, you may be asking, where do I get started? Well, here are some very practical and tactical steps that you can begin with very soon, if not today. And it starts with an assessment, taking inventory of your current program, your current listening posts, and what you have available to you today and where you should be listening. You also have to define those metrics that we discussed in that second pillar. This is critical. I've worked with many customers, and they pride themselves on all the KPIs that they have. One customer had a scorecard that had 19 different KPIs. This may actually be your organization as well. The key is identify what is most important. These are some very difficult decisions, but it really becomes critical so that everybody is aligned on what we call that common currency of customer metrics. You also need to pick a starting point. Oftentimes people are a little bit overwhelmed with where to start, and it starts with picking a listening channel, capturing the information, analyzing it, and taking those insights all the way to the operational tools, making them a living, breathing thing. We advise don't get hung up on trying to capture more and more data, but move from capturing all the way to action with each and every individual listening post that you set up. Find those stakeholders early who are willing to be your early adopters. Work with them to create some quick wins and showcase those successes to your program governance. And then create and cultivate stakeholder champions who can influence peers. This is what we call our internal promoters. Leverage these internal influencers as much as you can. Cultivate other internal experts so that you're not the only one carrying the message, and expand the training into the key concepts and enablers of your CX program. As I mentioned, track, and monetize your program to justify those investments over time. Use those internal champions to expand the message and achieve that critical mass so that it becomes a part of your culture. Again, we're talking about a part of the behavioral norms, that customer centricity. Creating that center of excellence is very critical to make it programmatic, and then optimizing the program. Always keeping it fresh, right? Lather, rinse, repeat, as we always say. So I appreciate everybody's time. Here's my contact information. I look forward to engaging with you. And David, we'll turn it back over to you.
Very nicely done, Alan. Thank you for that. Now let's pass the event over to our next presenter, Brad Snedeker, Innovation Center Manager at Calabrio. Welcome, Brad. Brad, you might be on mute. Please unmute.
I absolutely am on mute. Thank you. And thank you, David. Thank you for having me. It's absolutely an honor to be here, and I appreciate the opportunity. The idea of the voice of the customer and improving a customer experience is a topic I am particularly passionate about and very much appreciate the opportunity to discuss this with you guys today. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is I think we all understand intellectually that we really live in an unprecedented time as far as human history is concerned, in that we have an amount of data available to us on a daily basis that we've never had access to before. And this has become an integral part of our daily lives. Most of the people in this country, most adults, walk around with a device in their pocket that gives them access, instant access to, and I'm just throwing out a number here, but let's say over 90% of all of the information that humankind has been able to gather over the last 10,000 years, and that's all available to you at the press of a button. So we are in a time where we have tremendous access to information, and we all understand this. We all hear the term big data thrown around in the corporate world all of the time. And when we talk about big data, to me, this concept of the voice of the customer is absolutely the epitome of what we mean by the idea of big data. We have hundreds and thousands of conversations that are recorded within our organizations on a daily basis. And if we look at just one channel of communication, if we look at just the traditional telephony channel or the voice channel, and look at traditional means, a quality team typically has the ability to analyze manually 1 to 2% of the contacts that they review. And so what does that mean? Well, that means that almost every conversation that we have goes unanalyzed and unreviewed within the contact center world. And again, that's just talking about voice. That's just talking about the speech channel. And again, I think we all understand that today we're really living in an omni-channel world. We have so many different options at our disposal that we can use to interact with different organizations that the traditional telephony model, while it's still kind of king today, most people still do use the voice channel. The reality is that will not be the case for that much longer. As the demographics change. And so people are utilizing more and more options like chat and email and brick and mortar locations, traditional mail, and even interacting with their websites, as Andrew mentioned in his presentation. And if you aren't thinking of website interactions as an actual conversation with your customers, understand that it absolutely is. The way that people navigate through your website is absolutely a conversation. They are telling you, based on what they click and what they don't click, what they respond to within your organization and what they don't. And by collecting all of this information, we really do have access to the true voice of the customer. Contained within all of this data is the true voice of the customer. And by being able to access that information and being able to systematically sort through that information, we can use that to identify trends, risks, and opportunities within our contact center. And more importantly, we can use that information to drive to positive business outcomes that are beneficial to both my customer and to my organization. And so it's an absolutely critical topic when we talk about understanding the voice of the customer. And one of the primary tools that we can use to unlock this, as some of my colleagues have talked about already, is the concept of using analytics to unlock the true voice of the customer. And again, when a lot of people think about analytics, their mind immediately goes to speech analytics and being able to analyze spoken word. And Sabrina did an excellent job of explaining how absolutely critical that is to understanding the voice of your customer. But analytics tools today really go beyond that. And we have the ability to analyze more than just traditional telephony conversations. We have the ability to analyze written word in addition to spoken word, so email, chat, app post-call surveys, and things of that nature. We have interaction analytics that allows us to monitor how people are processing through our website, how our agents are interacting with the tools that they have available to them on a daily basis. And so when we think about analytics, it's really important to think about analytics from a holistic perspective. We need to look at every method of communication that a customer has available to them and make sure that we're delivering a consistent customer experience across all channels. And analytics is a tool that allows us to do that. Today's analytics tools are accessible to everyone. They're easy to use, they're intuitive, they're personalized, and they allow for visual discovery of issues that you may not even be aware of. And so at Calabrio, we really champion this idea of analytics for everyone. This isn't the realm solely of data scientists. You don't need to have a master's degree in order to utilize these tools to glean valuable information from your contact center. And what this allows you to do, of course, at the end of the day, is it allows you to make better decisions which allow you to improve the overall customer experience. And again, make no mistake, again, as Alan did a great job of explaining, what this all boils down to is all about customer experience. We need to make sure that we are servicing our customers and we are absolutely delighting our customers every single time they step through the door to talk to our organization. And whether that door is a telephony door, an email door, whatever channel they're using to communicate, we need to make sure that we are delighting them every single time. This allows us to, by monitoring quality and improving quality, it allows us to make our customers more happier with the service that we're providing them. It allows us to, by monitoring our agents, it allows us to increase their productivity, their efficiency, recognize cost savings, increase revenue. All of these things are central to what we're trying to do simply by unlocking the voice of the customer. So when we talk about how this actually works, how do we actually use analytics to improve the customer experience? Again, when we look at these things holistically, when we look at the entire customer experience and how customers are interacting with our organization, what we realize is that by understanding the voice of the customer, it allows us to respond to customer needs in a much more satisfying way than we ever were before. And the primary way that we do that is by proactively recognizing issues that may cause customer dissatisfaction and taking action on those things before they become a problem. So that's really the key to analytics, is it allows you to be proactive in these types of situations rather than waiting for your competitor to identify a problem in your market and finding a solution. You now have the ability to identify those trends and take proactive action. And by making these types of tools integral to what you do as a contact center organization, it will absolutely lead to increased customer satisfaction due to a better customer experience. And of course, at the end of the day, what the goal of all of this is by improving the customer experience, it's going to allow us to grow our revenue. And right, that's the goal of any organization. We need to be able to increase our sales, increase our revenue, increase our market presence. And analytics allows us to do this two ways. It allows us to do it both directly by analyzing trends in upselling and cross-selling opportunities, what customers are more apt to be receptive to an upselling opportunity, what customers may actually be put off by an upselling or a cross-selling opportunity, and identifying those things proactively and training our agents to recognize those verbal cues and to integrate that into the way that they do business. And indirectly, we can also grow our revenue simply by providing an excellent customer experience every single time a customer steps through the door. If you are the type of contact center organization or customer service organization that consistently delights your customers, and as Andrew pointed out at the beginning of our talk today, not very many people are actually meeting that goal, unfortunately. But if you are one of those 8% of companies that are meeting our customer service demands, those are the type of companies that customers come back to year after year after year after year. And so it's an absolutely critical thing to understand and a critical tool to implement within your environment. As a final thought, I'd just like to leave you with the idea of this concept of the company as a contact center. And again, Alan did a great job of really talking about making these types of ideas central to your organization and making them integral to your culture. Analytics is not a tool solely at the disposal of the contact center team. These types of insights can be valuable to your entire organization. Imagine your sales group having the ability to go in and analyze what sales techniques are successful, what aren't, what marketing campaigns are people responding to, and which ones aren't they. From a legal perspective, what sort of regulatory or compliance issues might we be getting into? So the ways that we can affect change within our organization through the use of analytics are myriad and are not simply the sole responsibility of the contact center. And so it's absolutely a critical thing to, again, make integral to the culture of your environment and in order to be successful in this day and age. And so with that, I would like to, again, thank you for your time, David. Thank you for having me. There's my contact information there on the screen, and I will pass the floor back to David. Thank you.
All right, Brad. Thank you very much for that. So I do have a few questions that I'd like to ask our presenters. But before I do, I'd like to also remind our viewers that if you have a question, please just type it into the question box provided and click on the Submit button. As I stated earlier, we'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but if your question has not been answered during the show, please, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. Okay, so with that, let me start off with a couple of questions to Alan. Alan at Verint, how would you recommend doing an assessment of a company's CX programs?
That's a good question, David. There are a number of techniques that you can take. One of my favorite and probably one of the the most popular is to do a customer journey mapping exercise. Now, many organizations, likely many of the organizations that are joining today, have already done one or do regular customer journey mapping. Some organizations actually have a journey mapping room. But the recommendation here is if you have not, or if you have and it perhaps has been a little bit, has been a couple of years, that you revisit that. And very importantly, I think it's valid to have a third party. Now, whether it be a third-party consultant or a third-party consultant from within your own organization, that recommendation really comes down to some sort of investment. It really marks the willingness for the executives within your organizations to drive the customer experience program forward. And I think it's a good litmus test to see where they are in adopting CX as being something that will be ongoing. And furthermore, a third-party recommendation is usually held with a little bit more gravity than somebody who may be perceived as trying to drive forward the CX agenda. So an independent view is valuable, but a journey map is an extremely powerful tool that can also be used to physically socialize what the customer journey looks like.
All right, great, thanks. Another question for you, Alan. What are some best practices to help organizations get more internal champions on board to accelerate their CX programs adoption and impact?
Yeah, that's a good one. As I outlined in some of the tips and tricks, I think one of the first steps should always be to identify that internal promoter, that internal ally that you have. And once you do so, to sell it, I think the best thing to do is to make sure that everybody on your governance board knows that there's a real person behind the data. Some techniques are, for example, to play a call. So if you're showing a trend in emotional callers for a certain segment, that you let the stakeholders know that there's a real person behind there, or to show them a survey verbatim. If you don't have speech analytics as an example. But, you want to really make it real. You want to personalize it. And what I found is when you do play a call, the executives start squirming in their seat if it's a really, powerful call. And that's the type of visceral response you want. And that can really help you, get some folks on board to take action quickly.
All right, thanks, Alan. Let's bring Andrew into the discussion. Andrew, do you think the phone channel will continue to decline?
That's actually a great question. There was a report that came out recently that, and I can't remember who it was. It may have been Forrester in the U.S., that for the first time ever, the website has overtaken the phone channel as the primary point of customer service. Which is, for us who have been in this business for a very long time, it's kind of been the light at the end of the tunnel. So I do think that folks are realizing that digital service over traditional channels is something that's slowly but surely increasing, and now we've, I guess, kind of seen an inflection point in the fact that folks have really told the companies they work with that the web is far more important to them than waiting on hold, for example.
All right, another question for you, Andrew. What is the time to value with virtual assistants? How soon does it take to get up and running, and when do you start to see a return on your investment?
Wow, that's a multifaceted question. Typically, and I can really only speak, from the experience I have working here with IntelliResponse, we're able to launch. So projects start to launch within 60 to 90 business days. I think that puts us up kind of as one of the quickest in the marketplace today. With respect to the ROI, as we showed with the example, the case study example with BC Hydro, typically what we see with our customers is ROI fully achieved with roughly between 180 and 365 days. So within that first year, based on the scope of what we've deployed, virtually all of the companies that we work with will see a full return on that investment.
All right, great, thank you. Let's bring Sabrina into the discussion. Sabrina, if a company runs a small business, is it necessary to hire a VOC expert to run a speech analytics platform?
That's a great question, and I love this question. We get it a lot. And So speech analytics is becoming so user-friendly. You really don't have to be a voice of the customer expert. The tools, in fact, are getting so much easier. It's important to just formulate a plan. Often when I'm speaking to clients, technology is running their solution needs. It's more of, don't let the technology dictate what you're going to do. It's important to start with use case first, and that's really the key to success. And again, from a technology standpoint, it's start from use case, tie it to management's goals and objectives, and let that dictate what the technology can do for you. And yeah, again, you don't need to be an expert.
Okay, you may also get this question a lot, but how does a company fit a VOC monitoring program into an already busy operation?
That's a good question. It's supposed to make your life easier and more efficient. So the key is to really tie it into your day-to-day operations. The fact is the tools are becoming more cloud-based and easier to use by someone who may have experience with speech analytics or someone who's never experienced it before, to be used by managers, agents. It's the key is to tie it to the
Oh, it looks like we lost you, Sabrina. All right, we'll see if you come back. But in the meantime, why don't we go ahead and bring Brad into the discussion? Brad, a couple questions for you. Do you have any real-world examples of organizations that have used analytics to drive a better customer experience?
Yeah, excellent. Yes, we do have, of course, a number of examples. We've been in the analytics world for a while. One of my favorite examples of this was actually a company that was able to realize nearly immediate benefits using analytics to improve their customer experience. What we found, and this was an issue that they weren't actually aware of initially, but we found through using analytics that they actually had a fairly significant issue with first contact resolution. They were constantly having people calling back in and saying, I've talked to somebody about this before, and I need a little bit of help. And again, using the holistic approach to analytics, we were able to go back and find the root of that problem, and it was an incredibly simple process change. In fact, actually, not to give away the game, but all we actually did was we implemented a process change where they simply just reconfirmed the customer's contact information at the end of the contact. And that is all it took, and their first contact resolution issues dropped by 30% within a month after implementing that particular program. And again, I hope I don't have to stress how critically important first contact resolution is to the customer experience. If we have a customer that has to call us multiple times over the same issue, that customer is 9 times out of 10 not going to be happy with the service that they received with your organization. So really, really quick ROI on that particular project.
All right, Brad, one more question for you. Do you have any best practice recommendations for organizations new to analytics?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the two areas that I see people that are implementing an analytics solution struggling with a little bit is just getting out of the gate and starting out with the product. Once you're running with it, things tend to run pretty smoothly. So for customers that are implementing analytics for the very first time, the biggest suggestion that I can have for you is step one, focus on the business. Okay, focus on an actual business issue and something that you are trying to solve. And again, as everybody on this panel mentioned, we really are trying to look at things that are measurable business impact, first contact resolution, escalation management, things like that. Focus on a particular business issue, and the most important thing is step two. Once you've identified the issue and once you've identified the problem, be prepared to act. Knowledge without action is not valuable to us at all. So we need to make sure that we're implementing action plans that are going to improve these things. And again, back to what Alan was talking about, we need to make these sorts of things integral to the culture of our organization and our contact center.
All right, thanks for that. It looks like we have time for one more question. And the question goes to Alan from one of our viewers, Joe. And the question is, can you discuss tips and timing for securing budget and establishing ROI for implementing a CXP program? Alan?
Yeah, this is the typical "where do I start?" question, and most CX programs are 10 years or newer. Very seldom do you come across one that is, I think the most senior folks that I've spoken to have been in the industry for 25 years from a pure play customer experience standpoint. So the key as you're starting to kick off your customer experience program internally is to find somebody who will be the lead, and that person needs to be somebody who is internal. Needs to understand how to influence within the organization, because what needs to happen is they need to be able to find and identify an executive sponsor. Once you're able to do that, then they will entrust you with a very minimal budget. CX programs are notoriously, asked to fly to the moon with a box of Legos, right? So, relying on operational expenses, not CapEx. So with that, I think there's a reliance on identifying some of those quick wins, using some relatively inexpensive tools like survey tools, getting more advanced with things like speech, but really starting with something so that you can show the impact of what a VOC program can have. But really what that comes down to is identifying a leader early on who is very well connected within the organization. That's one way of ensuring success. If you try to bring in somebody from the outside, they're likely not going to have the relationships needed to drive it forward early.
All right, great. Thanks for that. It looks like Sabrina is back with us, so let's bring her back into the discussion. I asked you, Sabrina, how does a company fit a VOC monitoring into an already busy operation? You started that to answer that and then got cut off, so please continue with your answer.
Yes, and I apologize for that. I think Brad touched a lot on that too. It's about integrating, during his presentation, it's about integrating it into your day-to-day operations. So ignore having to hire a data scientist or a voice of the customer expert. Tie it into your systems. It's supposed to make your life easier, not more complicated. And we offer training to assist with that. So you'll have a helping hand along the way, figuring out what to integrate, what you want to analyze, and then from there, it kind of runs on itself, and it's meant to be made part of your training regime, for example, or your coaching initiatives.
All right, great. Thank you for that. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions today. We apologize that we were unable to get to all of the questions, but as I stated earlier, all questions will be answered via email. I'd like to thank our speakers today, Andrew Estevez, Director of Account Development at IntelliResponse, Sabrina DeRose, Account Manager of Speech Analytics Solutions at CallFinder, Alan Steffen, who's the Global Vice President of Customer Analytics at Verint, and Brad Snedeker, who is the Innovation Center Manager at Calabrio. If you'd like a copy of the presentation, you can download it once the event is archived. And if you'd like to review this event or send it to a colleague, please use the same web address that you used for today's event. It will be archived for 90 days. Plus, as a courtesy, you'll receive an email tomorrow with the web address to view the archive. And just for participating in today's event, you could win this Google Chromecast. The winner will be announced on May 29th. Please go to www.destinationcrm.com to see if you're the winner. This concludes our broadcast. Thank you for joining us today.